Disclaimer.
Bill Gates said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." What's a real-life example of this? I was working as a stockboy in a supermarket, and when we had to fill the milk cooler, people would bust open a 12-pack of milk cartons and put them in one by one. On my first day, I just placed the 12-pack in the cooler and cut the plastic off on one side with my box cutter and yanked it from under it, and the look of the store manager and the other employee who was training me was pure bewilderment. From that day, everyone did it my way. I did this during the start of the pandemic with paper towels on an empty shelf, thanks COVID panic buyers. Instead of opening the box of single-roll paper towels and placing them on the shelf, I just cut off the bottom of the box and slid the rolls right out. Start of lockdown, my 9-year-old son was having worksheets emailed to complete at home. One day, left him at the laptop doing his maths while I made some dinner with my 3-year-old daughter. Walked into the living room with his dinner to find him asking the Alexa all of his maths questions. I wouldn't call that lazy so much as an intelligent use of the technology at hand. Learning and utilizing technology is probably a much better lesson learned than whatever the particular maths problems he was working on. I take your point, but he was actually doing it in the least efficient way possible. He memorized the equation he needed to ask, say 327 times 8, walked over to Alexa, asked her the equation, walked back to the laptop, walked back to Alexa to ask her again because he'd forgotten the last 2 digits, walked back to the laptop, enter the answer, walked back to Alexa to check it again. He had to keep walking backwards and forwards because he knew it was cheating, so he turned the volume down so I wouldn't hear from the next room. So while he thought he was being clever, he was actually taking more time to figure the answer out using the Alexa than it would have taken to do it himself. Plus, of course, there's the fact he was working on a laptop that has a calculator and a Cortana assistant that does the exact same as Alexa, and he knows how to use both the calculator and Cortana but still chose to cheat in the least efficient way possible. Worked as a laborer at a nursery one summer. Daily tasks included manually watering 15,000 plants each day. Put together a back-of-the-napkin plan to build an irrigation system and spent the next few weeks building it with some money from the boss. That system is still running 15 years later and does all the work now. I did automate myself out of the job and had to find another eventually. Couple years later, got my engineering degree. I'm convinced engineers are inherently lazy people that will spend a disproportionate effort to make things easier. That is precisely what engineering is. My brother-in-law spent a whole summer trying to figure out how to fix his sagging deck at the lake, which he could in theory crawl under and jack it up. It would have been a tunneling project. It's a 60 by 60 area, all long 2 by 6 boards. Massive. I sat there long enough with enough beers in me to come up with the idea of just cutting a square out of the sagging area about 3 foot x 3 feet, jacking it up, then re-screwing down the boards. He paints the thing every spring with a roller anyhow, so it's not like the square cut shows up. He thought I was a genius. I was just lazy. We had to hold a thermometer in water in chemistry class. It probably was only 20-minute experiment, but your arms get tired after a couple minutes and you can't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan or it won't get an accurate reading. So instead of sucking it up and just holding the thermometer, my lab partner built a contraption out of lab books and paper clips to somehow hold the thermometer in the water without it touching bottom. It was the stupidest looking thing you would ever see in a lab class, and our professor even walked over and said, "If it looks stupid, sounds stupid, but it works, then it isn't stupid." My lab partner and I joke that he wasn't talking about the contraption but the intellect of my lab partner. I had a math teacher that actively encouraged his students to be as lazy as possible, defining lazy as actively searching for ways to do as minimal work as possible. His logic was that, the way math is now, it could always be simplified and still work the same, someone just needs to be lazy enough to find that. I was a paid intern at a large company during one summer back home from college. My work 95% consisted of using SAP, import to Excel, clean data and generate reports, occasionally create some tool someone needed. In the February 1st weeks after getting a hang of my responsibilities, writing all the Excel formulas needed, and basically automating 99% of my work, I was chilling. I went from actually working from 9 to 5 to maybe 1 hour tops a day. Finding, importing, cleaning, and reporting usually took hours, but with all the formulas it took 2 minutes of clicking. I then helped the other cool intern get his shit set up so we could both just chill. We could take 2-hour lunches, paid for by the company, and nobody said anything cause we were just getting so much more done than the other interns. OFC I helped for special tasks when asked, but those were simple 20-minute tasks building something in Excel. Overall, was the easiest/stressless internship of my life. The clerk was asked to bring 145 white papers into the office. He doesn't want to count the papers manually, so he printed 145 blank sheets and took them in. Smart, he used a machine that counts as one of its functions, but not the primary function, to do the counting for him. It's just enough outside of the box that most people wouldn't think to do it at all. One of my favorite examples is Andy Kim. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I don't think Kim is lazy so much as a genius. Andrew Joachim was a singer-songwriter who became famous under the stage name Andy Kim. He achieved success writing songs for bands like the Archies, possibly most notably Sugar, Sugar. After his success he coasted for a while until his record label dropped him for lack of output. At that point he created his own label and cranked out hits like Rock Me Gently. When they saw this, the big record labels then bought his label under the assumption that they would then profit off of the songs he wrote and performed. He then very shortly stopped writing songs and largely lived off the sale of his label. Work smarter, not harder. It took me like 3 months, but I automated a data pipeline to extract data, clean it up, and spit it out in an Excel or PDF format to one of our clients. I walked over to shoot the shit with the lady who handles my client and gives me tasks, and she told me we make $40K off them every month for that automated job. Fuck, I need to go start my own business. As a developer at least, it's quite common that everything you create at work belongs to the company. So make sure your script doesn't belong to them before you try and start a business with it. Take this guy's word. My wife's best friend's husband is an engineer. He worked for a company making industrial machines. He decided to go start a company of his own. Asked a lawyer and the lawyer said it should be no problem. 6 months down the road he got served a court order to shut down because he was using IP from his previous job. Ended up going to court and got wiped out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars penalty, future salary garnishment, the whole works. Even if the first lawyer says it's okay, get a second opinion and get it all written down. Spend $15K on lawyers up front or lose your ass. Take this guy's word. My wife's best friend's husband is an engineer. He worked for a company making industrial machines. He decided to go start a company of his own. Asked a lawyer and the lawyer said it should be no problem. 6 months down the road he got served a court order to shut down because he was using IP from his previous job. Ended up going to court and got wiped out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars penalty, future salary garnishment, the whole works. Even if the first lawyer says it's okay, get a second opinion and get it all written down. Spend $15K on lawyers up front or lose your ass. When I was in college I had a job at an Italian fast food place with a reputation for its breadsticks. They came in frozen and needed a bit to thaw, so we'd take a giant 3x4-foot aluminum baking sheet, spread them out in a single layer with no spaces and cover it with a plastic bag, then leave it sit in the walk-in overnight. The next day you'd have to get a pair of tongs and move each stick to a new tray, turning them over, then cover the new tray with the bag and let them sit on racks for a couple of hours before brushing on the garlic butter sauce. This was tedious enough that you'd usually be ready to brush the butter on the first tray as soon as you turned the last tray. I was given this task for the first time one morning and just did not want to deal with it. I realized if I put the second tray upside down on top of the first one then turned it over and took the first tray out, I got exactly the same results. Blew the boss's mind when I did the 3-hour job in about 15 minutes. I was given a 5 cents per hour raise. I was once set to test a certain piece of equipment on a ship. The test involved attaching the unit to a reader, then run loads of command line commands. Then, one would have to make a copy of all the text, copy it into Word and save it as a real crappy looking report. There was hundreds of units, and they needed to be tested several times a year. We did about 20 to 30 a day. It would take several weeks to finish. I didn't know coding at the time, but always wanted to learn it. Within 2 months, I had made a program, even with a GUI, to spot faults with ease, instead of having to actually read the reports. The program could read 3 units at a time, and would automatically create a smooth PDF report and save it on our server, named with serial number and date. The job was now to attach 3 units, then wait for about 3 minutes, detach and attach new ones. Basically 30 seconds work, 3 minutes break. I could now test all units in a day, though I would typically spread it out over a couple more days. When I left the company, I left the program on the test computer. I got an email from an ex-colleague a few months later, saying they were using the program on several ships now. There wasn't any manual for the program, of course, but it was so straightforward that it wasn't needed. An older company had a person dedicated to data entry, which boiled down to copying and pasting portions of data from text files into spreadsheet and formatting into a report. The person originally doing this job spent a full 40+ hours/week doing it, but was not very computer literate. When they retired, the company hired someone with actual skills. The new hire convinced management to let her work remotely after getting up to speed on the job. The first week at home was spent automating the entire job. The remainder of their multi-year tenure with the company was spent doing whatever they wanted, save the 10 to 15 minutes weekly to run their program and to answer the odd email here and there. All while getting paid full salary and benefits. They actually had to add in a few errors now and then to make it seem realistic. This is actually my job. I work for a local government entering new, renewed existing and disposal of our assets. Primarily roads and stormwater, essentially anything that is near a road that the local government has to maintain. The old guy who left, at 72 years old, legit wrote everything down before punching it into Excel to be converted into our financial database. When I started, I was shown how the job worked and I asked, did I have to write stuff down? My boss said no, that was just his old school way of doing it. So instead, I immediately entered data into Excel, skipping how long-winded first process, and cut the job time down significantly. Due to this, I got more duties and responsibilities. But it came with a raise. So I guess that's a 50-50 win? Worked in a local adult education center. One of my main tasks was to make calculation about how many people enlisted for a course, how many of them got discounts, unemployeds e.g., how many men/women/age etc. That was needed to calculate upcoming courses fees etc. That was my only work there and I hated it. This was in early 90s, so PCs were a thing in our offices, but I had no idea how to write a program or use a database to use this informations. Lucky as I am, our center had an interesting policy. When you want to educate yourself, you can attend that class for free. And when it's during the work time, then this is work time, as long as my supervisor is okay with that. She was. So I spent 3 months studying database structures, scripting, coding etc. I told my tutor what I want to do and he helped me to write a script that grabs all necessary informations from the course's database, copy that into another database, and then I went crazy and wrote code that was insane. I implemented what-if scenarios thanks to filters. At the end, I was able to do my work, that needed 6 hours a day within 15 minutes. I mean, before that it took e.g. an hour to have all the necessary informations to have a how many unemployed single-parent women does it need to make the costs of that course even. I had everything back then. Now you want statistics, how many single-parent disabled foreign women at the age of 80 to 90 are needed for the next 2 years to keep the ornithology course running? Sure, no problem. Clickety-click, done. After that, I started the PC in the morning, grabbed all the data, ran my script, was done within 15 minutes, and then read the book I brought from home. At the end of the day, I gave my supervisor several dozens of papers, statistics, predictions etc. and said that was a lot of work, and went home. My supervisor was super happy with me because I did so much more now and was super effective. You can also watch other videos by going to the channel. I will be pleased if you like them.